Congratulations on your investment in the Healthy Lifestyles cooking system. By now you've had an opportunity to have your equipment delivered, you've unpacked it, and you've inspected it, and all the pieces have arrived in good order. First of all, from the standpoint of the versatility of it, one of the things to keep in mind is every home does need a Dutch oven. And as you all can tell, we have the 8-quart for your soup, your stew, your clam chowder, your chili. And the 8-quart Dutch oven has two covers that would fit on it, obviously. The dome lid here, which would be for stack cooking, or in itself could be used on top of the stove because of the special construction that we have in it as well. On the fry skillet that we have in the front row, that cover also fits on top of the Dutch oven, so they're interchangeable. That means that effectively you have a large size high Dutch oven and one that would be more shallow. Now everybody needs a Dutch oven, everybody needs some kind of a fryer for steaks or chops or chicken or hot cakes. Everybody needs something for their pastas, small amounts of soup or stew or clam chowder or chili. Everyone would need some kind of a vegetable container and some kind of a unit for warming up leftovers, and etc. And we have the small fryer. Now with this collection, although people will identify that as being a Dutch oven, maybe for soup or for stew or for clam chowder or for chili, one of the things that's really neat is the construction. Because of the special construction along the bottom and up the sides, because of the sunray interior, because of the vacuum seal in the cover, and the satin finish, effectively every container is like a little oven. So every container can be used to cook with water. They could be used to cook without water. Everyone could be used to bake. Everyone could be used to roast. Everyone could be used to fry without grease. On the other hand, you could use water for soup or stew or clam chowder or chili, and you can also use oil, for example, if you wanted to deep fry something, that would work for you as well. So basically it's very versatile and the pieces are interchangeable. For example, we talked about this one here in a lot of our cooking presentations as not being used for steaming. Now the exception would be for certain seafoods, but we certainly wouldn't steam a vegetable in light of the fact that this equipment can cook it in a vacuum instead. But for straining spaghetti, macaroni, and cereal products, these particular strainers are handy for that. And because of the construction of them, they fit in more than one container in each of the different collections. So basically, it's very versatile. Whatever container that you want to use it in, pretty much you can. Now, also that's handy with this is if you wanted to extract fat from something like hamburger. We'd put water in the bottom of here. We'd put the hamburger in there. Bring it to the audible tone using the vacuum system, and then turning it to low. Between the heat and the vacuum would render the fat from the hamburger. The fat would drop into the bottom when we'd have nice lean hamburger for making meat, sauce, chili, or tacos. Now the collection is not only very versatile in that every piece, for example, could be used for roasting or baking, but it's also very compact. Because of the engineering and the design, the collection is popular for people with RVs or limited amount of cupboard space, because effectively, if you take your time, you can end up basically storing the entire collection away in about 2 cubic foot of space. And in other words, you don't need thousands of dollars worth of cupboard space just to store away the collection here. So basically, you can see where the whole collection can disappear in about 2 cubic feet of space. Now the nice part about that is when you pull a container out of the cupboard, you also have the right cover to go with it. You don't have to go on a hunter trip looking for your covers. If you wanted to hang it up and show it off, the lids would be counterbalanced. They would stay inside. Now you'll notice that we have what we call twin safety handles. On any brochure you may have received, it might show the container with a long handle. The reason we ship the collections with the twin safety handles is because when people figure out they're cooking without water, most of the time there's nothing to drain, there's no need to have a long handle. So therefore, most people keep the twin safety handles. Having said that, we normally send out with your collection long handles if you choose, at no extra charge, so that you could take this off and put a long one on. But the reason that people like the twin handles, you notice when we were cooking, and we didn't have a traffic jam. If you saw this equipment cooked in, there was no traffic jam on the stove with handles sticking every which way. Plus, when you want to serve at the table or store it in the fridge or wash it in a dishwasher, clean it in the sink, you don't have the long handles to be coping with. Okay, another piece that's very handy in the collection is what a rack and cups. In a conventional set of pots, this at best would be used for poaching eggs. In this concept of cooking, it's also for muffins and buns and tarts, or melt chocolate or cheese or butter. For example, if you wanted to do potato salad, but you didn't want to hard boil the eggs, what you could do at the same time that you do the potatoes in the big Dutch oven, cooking without water. At the same time we cook the potatoes without water, we'd hard poach the egg as opposed to hard boil the egg. The eggs don't turn black and they don't smell. Also in the collection we have the double boiler, and that of course is nice for melting things like butter, chocolate and cheeses, things of that nature. It also technically could be used if a person chose to as a cover on some of the various containers that are part of the collection as well. Now the handles, as I mentioned, they're very versatile, they're very neat, but they're guaranteed. They go in the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. If you would ever drop a container, break a knob or a handle, you would get a new one free of charge. Even the knobs, there's nothing to rust or corrode or collect food particles or tear tea towels. The engineering is really excellent. People tell us our warranty alone is worth thousands of dollars. Okay, we're going to start off with one of the fundamentals. We're going to talk about cooking some firm vegetables, specifically things like potatoes, carrots, and turnip. What the advantage of the system when it comes to cooking foods is you can peel them or not, it's your choice. If you choose to peel them, that's one thing, but if you don't, without water, it's amazing how pleasant they can end up being when you cook them with the peel on, which is what I'm going to do here today. Now when it comes to potatoes or something starchy, the first thing that I would do is take whatever container that would allow me to do the potatoes or the vegetable and have the container as full as possible. The fuller the container, the faster it cooks, the less air that needs to be displaced. So what we're going to do with this, for starters, we're going to take and pour some water into the container. The reason I want to do that is I'm going to be cooking potatoes without water. One of the advantages, like I say, is you can not bother to peel them, but you can also cut them smaller so they'll cook quicker, and without water they're not going to turn to soup or stew. The thing with potatoes, however, is that they are starchy. So I would cut them into water, because if I didn't cut them into the water and cut them into the container by itself, they would be prone to stick even before I started, because the starch would make it stick to the container. It's like you could almost stick the potato to a window. You could stick it to the bottom of the pan even before you got started. So I would cut the potatoes into the water, and you notice I'm cutting them bite-size, the kind of bite size that would be likely cut when you would be eating them anyway. And when I'm going to cook a container full of food, as I mentioned, the key is to try to have the container at least 2/3 full. Having said that, you may not want to have this plumb full of potatoes. So that's where being able to cook in a vacuum without water and not have any flavor transfer comes in handy, because we can take a second vegetable like our carrots and turn them into carrot sticks like you see here, and we would lay them on top of the potatoes. So now I'm cooking two vegetables in the same container at the same time. Everybody agrees there's a lot of things in life they'd rather be doing than dishes, and that certainly accommodates a lot less dishes to do. So there we have the container. We will now drain that off like so. Now, every stove that we use is different. When we do in-home dinner parties or everybody, when they get their equipment, your stove will be different than somebody else's. You know it better than anybody else, but until such time as you get started in using your equipment on a regular basis, what we would teach you to do is to start with up to 4 tablespoons of water. Now, we'll put the 4 tablespoons of water in here, with the understanding how much of this liquid is left after we're finished cooking these potatoes and carrots is how much less liquid we could have not started with. So we start with 4, how much is left tells us how much less we would have started with on this particular stove. So we're going to take and turn the heat up on this. So we'll start it on a medium heat, put our cover on with the vacuum knob in the open position. So at the right temperature, it's going to give off a tone. That's why we call it the vacuum tone, because while it's creating the vacuum, it starts to give off a tone, sounds like that little tea kettle. So we'll turn that up, and when it comes to the temperature, it'll give off a tone, telling us two things. It's hot enough to make the food healthy, but not so hot that would ruin it. At that point, we'll turn it to low for 10 minutes and then shut it off. Now, you notice we started with a cold container for vegetables, but what we would do if we're going to do meats is we start with a preheated utensil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take what is often referred to as our small skillet from the collection, and I'm going to turn the temperature up to medium again, and I'm going to put it on the heat. Now, because I'm cooking without water, without oil, I cannot look at the container and tell if it's hot. So the thing that there's 2 ways to tell if it's come to a temperature that would be ideal for putting the meat in, searing the meats. My favorite way is to take and put a paper towel inside of the container. Now in our home I don't have to worry about doing this because I know the temperature on my stove. In your home you maybe won't have to worry about it either, because you'll know that medium heat is truly medium heat. And what will happen is when this comes to the temperature, that paper towel will begin to turn brown. When it's hot enough to brown the paper towel, it's now hot enough to brown the meats. And then I'm going to do a steak in there, just a very inexpensive blade steak. We use an inexpensive cut to show that even an inexpensive cut of meat can come out really quite nice when it's cooked this way. I don't know if you bother at home, but what I prefer to do when I take meats or roasts out of the package is I like to scrape them. Because if you think about it, when they prepared this food, cut this steak up, they used a saw, and effectively what I've removed from here is what I like to think of as sawdust. Okay, and so it really eliminates that tacky looking sawdust from your steak. And then I've cleaned it up nice. All I'm going to do when it comes to the temperature is put the steak in the hot container. And we'll take it, and it'll stick, but only till it's brown. When it gets brown, it'll come loose, and we'll show you how that works as we go along. Now, we've been waiting for this one to come to the temperature and give off the tone. It's starting to give off that tone. Something else we're going to do, though, today, we're also going to cook you some wieners for hot dogs, but again, we're going to do them with next to no water. In other words, basically, if you think about it, the reason for water in most types of equipment is because the equipment is inadequate. If you didn't have the water, you'd just toast the food. It would be burned. And you try to use the water to insulate the food from the heats. But the damage the water does is quite significant as well. So all we would do if we're going to do wieners as an example with little or no water is just again put maybe 4 tablespoons in the bottom of the container. As a matter of fact, you don't even need that many. In this container, you just want enough moisture to barely cover the bottom of the container. And then we'll take these wieners and we'll put them into the hot unit or into the container. Put the appropriate cover on it. And you hear the whistle. We'll shut that one and turn that to the lowest temperature that we possibly have. Now, with firm vegetables, we turn them to low for about 10 minutes. Then we generally just shut them off. Now, if you have a ceramic or solid element type stove, you don't have the instant turn off at the temperature like you have here today. So the recommendation in that environment would be to bring it to the whistle on an element, a ceramic or solid element part of your stove. When it whistles, instead of turning it to low, transfer to an element that you've already had turned on a lower heat. So the temperature change is adequate enough to create the vacuum and pull the cover down and cook your food. So on a ceramic stove that doesn't cool, you don't have the benefit of being able to immediately control the temperature downwards. Then instead of trying to turn it to low and wait for it to cool, just simply transfer to one that's already been turned on a lower heat. That's generally only needed when you're doing meats, because vegetables, for the most part, when you have them come to the tone, you can turn them off and it pretty much holds enough heat to continue to cook them anyway. Now, although these vegetables are going to be done very quickly, you can leave them long, because without the water, they're not going to turn to soup or stew or get overcooked or mushy. So we have our wieners in here. Let's find an element for the wieners. We'll turn this one up to get it started and turn that to medium. And again, with the vacutone on the open. Vacutone, again, will tell us the right temperature. Now, our paper towel is starting to turn a little bit brown. So it's about the right temperature that would be required to do that steak. All we'll do with the steak now is place it in the hot skillet just like so. Now, if you're wondering if I was being sincere when I said it would stick, you can be the judge yourself. Okay, you're probably not going to get that out of there until it's brown. When it gets brown, it's going to get loose. It's a very non-porous surgical type. Stainless steel is so non-porous. As soon as the fat comes out of the food, it presses against the pan because the fat cannot get into the metal. It releases the food off of the metal, and then we'll be able to turn it over. With meats, we preheat, but also with meats, I only season after I sear. If we season the meat before, we often plug the pores of the meat, preventing them from searing shut as nicely. If I sear them first and lock the juices in, then add the seasoning, then put the cover on, create the vacuum, the moisture from the meat tries to escape, but because we've seared the pores closed, it's somewhat forced against the grain, so even an inexpensive blade steak like I'm doing today becomes really quite a tender and juicy steak to eat. Now, something else I'd like to do is corn on the cob without water. Corn on the cob, if you ever boil corn on the cob, you've probably observed how the water gets milky and white looking. If you ever distill the white stuff after boiling corn on the cob, you end up with corn syrup. About 26% of the very healthiest sugar in your food is gone in the first 1 minute of boiling it. Water is a solvent. It sucks mineral salts, which is flavor, color, which is vitamins from food. I mean, if you think about it, if you boil a soup bone, you throw away the bone, you keep the broth. You dip a tea bag, you throw away the bag and keep the tea. You boil coffee grinds, you get rid of the grinds, you drink the coffee. When we do fruits and vegetables with water, all of a sudden we have a challenge. What do we keep, the water, the liquid, or the vegetable? Well, ideally both, but better yet would be to eliminate the water so it doesn't take the natural flavor, which is the mineral salts, out of the food. Now, when I say cook corn on the cob without water, I guess I'm going to use just enough moisture again to create just enough vapor to force the air out of the container just the right temperature. Now, two ways that you can do the corn. Number one way is you can save the husks off the corn to put as in the bottom of the container. In the absence of the husks in the corn, all I would do is lay a paper towel on the bottom of the container, and I would add just enough moisture to make that paper towel kind of soggy. That's all I'm going to do to it now, is kind of make it soggy, and having it just enough moisture to create just enough vapor to force the air out of this container at just the right temperature. So a soggy paper towel on the bottom of the container, and then simply put your corn into the container as many pieces as you like, filling it as best you can, as full as you can. So there we got some corn in there. Put a cover on it, and let's find ourselves some more heat here. Turn this one on to light it good. And again, it's on medium heat with the vacutone on open. I promise you, when the steak got brown, it would get loose. When it gets loose, you'll be able to turn it over. See this, if it's not loose, it's not brown. Okay, if it is brown, it's loose. If it's brown, you'll be able to turn it, kind of spin it like I'm doing here now. See how I can spin it once it gets brown? And then you can see how beautiful that looks. Okay, so it's very, very simple to use once you understand the concept that you've got to trust the equipment and let the equipment actually do the cooking, as opposed to having to stand around and watch it. So we got this on medium heat and the vacutone open. Now with the steak at this point is when you might add a little garlic salt, or whatever you like, whatever your favorite seasonings. And a Sunday morning, what I like to do is do hash browns, the steak and hash browns. I brown and sear the steak on two sides, take some hash browns, lay them on the bottom of the skillet, put the steak on top, put the cover on, you got an awesome breakfast. You can see the vapors escaping, giving off the tone like a little tea kettle. So if you've ever operated a whistle tea kettle, you're qualified to operate the new vacutone system. When it whistles, I've turned it to low, and now we'll just shut that one. Over here we have the wieners cooking in the vacuum without the water. We'll shut that one totally off. There's more than enough heat to continue to cook those. So what we have in here, the potatoes and carrots, are on a lower temperature. The wieners are turned off and the steak is turned to low. We have yet to bring the corn to the tone. But when it comes to the right temperature, it'll also give off that tone. That's again why we call it the vacutone. Now, those are the main tips. So basically, just a quick review. You'll preheat with meats. Start with a cold pan with vegetables. Meats will stick till they're brown. When they get brown, they'll get loose. When they get loose, you'll simply turn them over. Once you've seared them on all the sides, then you put the cover on with or without adding any vegetables. For example, in a roast. With a roast beef dinner, what's really impressive, if I want to do a roast, one of the first things I do is I try to maximize the efficiency of the equipment. The way I do that is I try to buy a roast that's bone out, so as much of the meat as possible can be put flat against the pan. If I have a bit of a bone in a meat, a roast, the meat shrinks just a little bit, and the bone then suspends the meat from touching the hot utensil. But if I have bone out, then I can brown and sear the meats properly. So sometimes if I got a very awkward, round-looking roast with no flat sides, I'll purposely carve it before I brown and sear it. So I got a lot of flat sides, brown and seared as best I can, so I got a nice oven crisp texture and appearance and taste, and then put my cover on with or without vegetables. So again, we're going to preheat with meats and start with a cold pan. Now, so basically it's a grease-free method of cooking, including chicken. Now, there are some things we use a little butter. That would be eggs, fish, and liver, because they're highly calcified and primarily from a flavor standpoint. Now, having said that, we're going to do some eggs here, but we'll use an alternative that has been shown to me where the eggs are concerned was in the case of would be using Pam. So we'll use some Pam, and we'll do ourselves up an egg here. Now, with the these are off anyway, so I can take that off the heat. Let's put this one on and do the egg. Because people spend anywhere from $19 to a couple $100 on non-stick pans. Some of those high-end titanium ones can sell for a couple $100. And the bottom line is every nonstick pan you ever buy is only nonstick until the nonstick don't stick. Then everything's going to stick. Now, it's not a matter of if a coating is going to come off a nonstick pan, it's a matter of when. So with this particular equipment, what we can do is just put this one on, and we're going to put the egg in it. But first of all, we're going to take and spray it generously with some PAM, something like so. Bring that to a temperature. It could be egg, or it could be butter, but in this particular case with PAM. And then what we're going to do is take, and that's on a medium heat, and we're going to take and drop the egg into that pan on medium heat, like so. Then what we're going to do is take and put a tablespoon, I need some more liquid here I think, maybe have enough. You put that in, a tablespoon of liquid in, like so, and that liquid is going to create enough vapor to baste that egg at the same time that we fry it. Then we put our cover on, and that should take about 1 minute. And in about 1 minute, what will happen is we'll have ourselves a really nice fried egg. Let's see what happened with our egg if it's in fact getting basted. Oh, it looks pretty good actually. And is that sliding around in there nice, or is that my imagination? Can you see that? Beautiful. Just sliding around in there absolutely like nobody's business. So the only thing that will stick to this equipment if it's used properly are real good cooks. Everything else will only stick until it's done, and when it's done, it'll be ready to be used. All right, you hear the tone over here. That's our corn on the cob coming to the tone. The vacuum tone at the right temperature whistles like a little tea kettle. It's now creating the vacuum, forcing the air out. So now we're going to take and turn that to the lowest temperature we have. And because I treat corn much like a firm vegetable, leave it low for about 10 minutes and off for thereafter. Now, the next thing I want to do is start to show some of the foods that we've actually already done here pretty much. The steak is really amazing. An inexpensive blade steak, it was done very quickly, but at the same time, the amount of juice is huge. But take a look for yourself. That's our beautiful steak, and look at the amount of liquid meat, if you will, that's in that container. Now, if we'd have browned and seared that on two sides and put some hash browns underneath that and put that steak back on top of it, it would be so good you'd have to eat it with your shoes off so your toes would have room to wiggle. I mean, it's really tasty, that's for sure. Now, the other thing that we had going on over here would have been the hot dogs without the water. And again, sometimes when you turn them down, the cover can suck down so tight that you can't take it off because it's really a vacuum. A simplest analogy that I sometimes use in explaining it would be like a pressure cooker in reverse. It's below the boiling point, sucking the cover down, pasteurizing and preserving the value of the food, as opposed to above the boiling point, potentially blowing the cover off and destroying the food. If it ever gets so tight you can't take it off, just push this back open, lets the air back in, and you can see those wieners cooked there with very minimal moisture. They puff up. They're so proud to be cooked in the absence of the water. The corn has just been turned down. We're going to leave it till it's cooked. We've shown you the other vegetables, excepting I don't think we've shown the potatoes and the carrots. The potatoes and the carrots, oops, that's the wieners, pardon me. This is the, see that lid is locked down? Push that open, let the air in, and there's our potatoes and our carrots. And you can see how nicely those carrots are done. They're nice and soft along with the potatoes. And at this point, what you could do is serve them in two separate containers. You've got two beautiful vegetables done and only one container to clean. Which brings up another big benefit. After all of the foods have been served, you can serve them in the covers, and people have had their opportunity to enjoy whatever there is. All of the leftovers can be put in one piece, and they can be stored in the fridge or the freezer. It's perfectly sanitary to do that. When you would take it out to reheat it, at that point you put it on the stove, put the cover on, and bring it to the whistle. At that particular time, you would basically serve it because it already had been previously cooked. So basically that's the long and short of that. We're going to just leave this corn for a couple more minutes. Actually, I think it's probably pretty much done. I can tell by the tone here. We'll turn that back open, let it in, and you can see how gorgeous that corn looks. That corn is really beautiful, and so it's about a 20-minute job to do the corn on the cob in the vacuum without the water as well. Corn is so tasty when you cook it in the vacuum, it's almost a crime to put butter on it, but it really, without the water, you don't lose the natural sugar, and that explains why it's so nice and tasty. Now, the care and cleaning of it is really simple. When you first get the equipment, what you'll want to do is you'll want to wash each piece with a hot soapy water and vinegar. When the equipment is manufactured at high temperatures, when it's all said and done, they really do a job of cleaning it nicely at the manufacturing level. But there is a potential for a little bit of residue from some of the machining that takes place. And so the vinegar then would cut any particular factory oils or bit of residue that might exist. it would not be noticeable, but in the case that's present, hot soapy water and a little vinegar is the best way to get started. Now this is the container that I did the egg in. As you can see, there's really not an awful lot to that one. It had been previously washed with hot soapy water and a little vinegar, so all I'm doing now is just taking and washing the remnants of that PAM out of it. And then we rinse them with a little bit of hot water and basically dry them. Now they're obviously dishwasher safe, but the reality of it is it's so quick and easy to clean up that the likelihood of wanting to take the time to stick it in the dishwasher and use all of that energy is probably not practical. But if you're in a hurry and you fire it in the dishwasher or you come home, it's going to be beautifully done, same as you see me do here. Now, it's not impossible to stain surgical stainless steel. The difference is if you happen to stain this quality steel, any kind of stain would be on the surface. It would never get into the metal. Now, earlier on, we used the grill pan to do fried chicken and baked potatoes in that 20-minute menu. And the fried chicken and baked potatoes in a grill pan is an impressive meal. And you can see some little marks from the heat, etc. And in the event that you would have that happen, the proper process for cleaning that would be to take some kind of powder cleaner, preferably a type that would not have chlorine. It doesn't necessarily have to be this brand, but any brand of powder cleaner that wouldn't have chlorine in it. Then what you would do is just take and sprinkle the powder cleaner, just hardly a tad of it, into the container, and then basically take a paper towel. And there's no stain or mark that you could get on this that you couldn't take off. Frankly speaking, I've seen people have some horrendous accidents and wonder, what am I going to do? It seems as I've ruined or destroyed my container. And frankly, if you could stain it so bad you couldn't clean it, we couldn't clean it, then we would end up basically giving you a new one. It's just not going to happen. Okay, so it would come off. So basically, minimum amount of moisture and the powder cleaner. And now that powder cleaner is a bit abrasive, so you kind of rub with the grain of the metals, etc. And then on the outside, if I had really had an accident, had high heat, and managed to turn it blue or brown on the outside, I would make sure it was more of a paste when I do the outside on the shiny surface of the equipment. But other than that, as you can tell, it really is an easy maintain. The longer you have it, the shinier it gets and the easier it cleans. Now, if you have any marks or whatever from using it on quite aggressively on a stove, those are more of a mark than a scratch. Like, it doesn't ever affect the way that it cooks. And those things that would appear early on seem to disappear over time as you sort of break the equipment in, if you will. But you can see this grill pan is the one that had the most abusive amount of temperature, and it really does clean up beautifully. Okay. So from a care and cleaning standpoint, I cannot think of much else to explain, because really it's just that simple. You'll love it. If you have questions, of course, service is one of the things we've prided ourselves on forever and a day. We're as close as the phone. Call at your convenience. Warranty, basically it's unlimited lifetime. Some people have even passed them on to their children and their children's children in the event that would happen. When they phone up to get warranty, we don't say, well, let me see your certificate. If you have the equipment, there's only one place you could have got it, and it's from us anyway. So really it's a matter, you give us the broken or defective piece, and we give you the new one. The only charge you might ever encounter is postage on a piece. But other than that, replacement is free, and that makes, it's like the snap-on tools of the kitchen, if you will. The warranty is excellent. So that's all I have, and congratulations again on your investment, and continued good cooking. All right, well, if you have had the opportunity in your lifetime to own any high-quality, healthy cooking system has been made available to you through this program, then you're the first to line up to buy additional pieces, add to your collection. The long and short of it is the best people to want a new Cadillac or more Cadillacs are those that already got them. The accessories collection that is available with this not only encompasses more equipment to do with food preparation, but also there are products available to do with air purification and products to do with water filtration. Because the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, those are the vital components of life. And from a health standpoint, we obviously got to take all of them into account. The food processor, if you wanted to see an actual video or a demo of it, it's available. but that has passed the test of time. For probably 60 years, that's been a very, very popular unit for fruit salads, vegetable salads, canning and preserving, making coleslaws, just all-purpose. Ours never leaves our countertop at home. We use it every day because we're cooking in a vacuum without water, without high heat, without air. We can cut food smaller, it'll cook quicker, and it won't turn to soup or stew. Well, there's no quicker way to cut food small to cook quick than using the master cut or cutter that you see here. Now, the gourmet skillets are really an awesome collection. The egg cooked in there with the Pam or butter. Fish and liver, the other things that we might use a little butter, but the truth of the matter is if it is lake trout or salmon, you could probably manage without the oil because they have enough natural fat of their own. The larger containers include, for example, this particular stock pot here is a 12 quart, but then so is this one with this cover on here. These covers are interchangeable, making them very versatile because this is an all-purpose roaster here, but that could become a very large roaster if you put it on the 22 or 24 quart sizes that we have. For straining spaghetti, macaroni, and doing various pastas or canning, those will fit inside of here. And then we have when I talk about air purification, we have this system that is really a classic when it comes to air purification. It's probably one of the most sold systems that's been available in North America in the last decade. Covers about 3,200 square feet, and ultimately it makes your home fresh and clean, much like after a rainstorm. There's a number of significant benefits that you would enjoy with this air filtration system. So other accessories we have available coming down the pike, but these ones are the ones that are most popular at this particular point in time. And see the distributor that made the healthy lifestyle cooking system available, healthy cooking system available to you, and they'd be able to let you know the many accessories that you could add to your collection.